My brothers and sisters, may the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Great crowds were traveling with Jesus, and he turned and addressed them. If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Which of you, wishing to construct a tower, does not first sit down and calculate the cost to see if there's enough for its completion? Otherwise, after laying the foundation and finding himself unable to finish the work, the onlookers should laugh at him and say, "This one began to build but did not have the resources to finish." Or what king marching into battle would not first sit down and decide whether with 10,000 troops he could successfully oppose another king advancing upon him with 20,000 troops? But if not, while he is still far away, he will send a delegation to ask for peace terms. In the same way, every one of you who does not renounce all his possessions cannot be my disciple. The Gospel of the Lord. We celebrate today the memory of St. John of the Cross, who was born in the early 1500s in Spain and was a spiritual ally and friend of St. Teresa of Avila. And in the year 1564, Teresa convinced him to attempt to reform the Carmelite community. Many of the religious orders at the time were not the most ideal as far as the way they were living out the gospel call. And so there was a need for a great reformation in many of those areas. And she ended up convincing him to do that for the Carmelites, and both she and he suffered a lot because of that. The Carmelites who refused to reform actually imprisoned them both a couple times and ended up being many privations against them. So they had a very difficult time in attempting to do it. The group that he finally formed were the discanceled Carmelites. So there's today two different Carmelite orders that exist. And the discanceled are today numbering about 4,000. So it's still a very strong, powerful image and witness in the church. Surely John lived out the message of the gospel today that we heard of accepting the cross, even when the cross is hard to bear. I'm sure he had many times questions of doubts for himself as he attempted to carry out this reform. Was it the right thing to do? Was he doing what he's supposed to do? Is this really God's plan? And yet he stayed to it because he realized that indeed that had to happen if there was going to be any kind of a change in the spirituality of the time of those who were part of the religious community. He lived out the call of accepting his own cross and living it throughout his life. And he laid surely a foundation of spirituality for not just the religious communities, but in turn it kind of colored and tempered the whole reform of the church. This is the same period of time the Council of Trent took place, which was a kind of massive time of reform within the Christian community. Today, then, as we remember John of the Cross and his efforts, let's be mindful as well that we too are called to put Jesus first in our life, to see him as the first and primary force in our life, as he suggests to us today, if we want to actually become his disciple.